boys up, get my head around. They can't solo when I carry the crown. Don't take a break, nothing to break me down.
Hi guys, hi is everybody. Uh, it's Jordan here, and lovely to meet you. And right, so what are we doing at the Cloud Workshop Studio today? So I'm trying to help advise, prepare everyone for your basically your first exam in Azure, which is the AZ900. And what I'm using today, just to show you, is a website called CrackCerts, which I have found to be very, very helpful in preparation for taking not only your first exam, but the exams that come after that. So, as you can see from the screen, we're on the AZ900. If you have not used CrackCerts before, so we have two different modes, exam mode, practice mode. And the questions are very similar, very, very similar to the ones you're going to experience in the actual exam. And I'm going to show you both of them today. So you have 35 questions, 45 in the exam mode, 35 questions, 45 minutes to complete the test. It says 80% pass percentage. That's really including a safety factor. The actual percentage you need is 70%, but it's better to have that little bit of leeway whenever you're practicing for your exam. So what I'm going to do today is just take you through. I'll show you the practice mode first, and I'll explain the exam mode after that. So if we go into practice mode, as you can see on the right, you've got your question list there. You can skip over questions if you want. But the practice mode, you're not, as I said, you're not timed on this. There's no time limit. So the question is, what are the two characteristics of the public cloud? And in my opinion, it's self-service management and metered pricing. So I would click those two. But in the practice test mode, you can't click them. So you just go show answer. Okay, so I was actually correct for once. And then this is the best thing. It gives you an explanation of why something is, your answer is correct or incorrect. And you can have a read through this at your own leisure. Depending on the way you learn, everybody's different. I know that. So it gives you a full explanation of the correct answers and also the incorrect answers. And then for additional reading from Microsoft, you can see the links here as well. So it's really, really helpful. Personally, I use this as a really good way of learning. Now, in the explanation category, I would write bullet points down, pen and paper. That's just me. You can take screenshots, save it in a folder, whatever you want to do. It's, as I say, everybody's different, but it's so useful, I find, and it really helped me passing. I've done the AZ 900, this one, and the AI 900 so far. Um, as I say, this really helped me. Okay, so that's the practice mode. So if we go back, we can do the exam mode. So obviously this is timed, so it's like the real exam. So let's go start exam mode. So we already know this one. Okay. So which cloud computing benefit matches the below description? Increase the compute capacity of apps in the cloud. So the capacity, and what I do with this are these kind of questions, or I would obviously look through the answers or the options for the answer and eliminate what is actually not possible or highly unlikely. So it's got to be scalability. You know, you're scaling your apps, increasing the uh, compute capacity, could be CPU, could be RAM, whatever. So we choose that. And also, like the exam, you can see here on the right hand side, you know, you don't have to answer the question. You could come back to it. In the actual exam, you can flag it. If you're not too sure, you have enough time left at the end. You know, you can flag the question, come back to it, have a little think. So that's a good option, which is always there. So, which cloud computing benefit matches the below description? Ensure that you, excuse me, users always have the best experience by deploying apps to all the regions where there are users. So regions, right? What are we thinking? It's not scalability because we just answered that. It's not high availability. It's not disaster recovery, so it's got to be geo distribution. If you think about it logically, it makes sense. So, what enables a cloud service to adapt quickly to changing requirements? So, if you're adapt quickly, you've got to be agile. So, agility. So, true or false? A company has complete control of the resources and security for its private cloud. Of course, it does. That's your resources. It's uh, your own private cloud. So, of course, you do. True or false, a hybrid cloud solution enables a company to control whether its applications run on-prem or in the cloud. Well, yeah, that's the definition of a hybrid. So that's got to be a yes. Another true or false question. Companies are responsible for capital expenditure when they scale up a virtual machine hosted in a public cloud. Okay, so capital expenditure is so capex is more you purchasing hardware. So if you're scaling up a virtual machine in the cloud, that's more operational expenditure. So it's basically software. It's not actual physical uh, hardware. So that's got to be a no. So okay, which cloud service model minimizes the management responsibility of a customer? Okay, so this is like a shared responsibility model. And I will give you a diagram on this. And I really want you to save this because it's very, very useful. So if I type in on Google, so it goes to Microsoft. So you got on-premises infrastructure, platform, software, and you can see Microsoft's responsibility. It could be Microsoft, could be another cloud provider. Customer responsibility and shared responsibility. So I would recommend you having a look at this diagram. It's very, very useful for this exam. So that would be software minimizes the management responsibility of the customer. So Microsoft takes care of most of this. Okay, true or false? For the platform as a service, cloud service, updating the operating system is the responsibility of the customer. Again, if you look at that diagram, it's pretty self-explanatory. We can actually even go back to it if you want. So you look here, pass operating system is light blue Microsoft. So that's no. Okay, true or false for the infrastructure as a service, network control is the responsibility of Microsoft. Let's go back to our diagram. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I'm just showing you. Um, so we look at I network control. Sorry, excuse me. So that's network controls. IaaS is the customer's responsibility. So that's a no. Again, true or false, software as a service, identity management is a shared responsibility between the customer and Microsoft. So identity, SAS, software as a service. Yep. So it's shared. So that's a yes. Okay, so we need to fill in the blank. Azure Site Recovery provides something for virtual machines. Site recovery. Okay, so if you look through the options, what are we thinking? Recovery. I'm thinking disaster recovery. Always read the question. Sometimes the answer is actually in the question, so just take your time reading the question. Okay, so your company plans to migrate all its data and resources to Azure. The migration plan states that only platform as a service solutions must be used in Azure. You need to deploy an Azure environment that meets the company's migration plan. What should you create? Okay, so we have a lot of options with, there's two options with Azure App Service, one with storage accounts, sorry, two with storage accounts. I'm thinking it's Azure App Service and SQL databases because the storage account is not in platform. Yeah, it's got to be that one. Okay, you got policies. Azure policies, you need to group related policies together. What should you use? Yes. So Azure policies are initiatives. That's the way I remember it. Like whenever you see Azure policies, so group related policies together is always initiatives. So which cloud computing model includes on-prem and cloud-based resources? So that's best of both worlds, hybrid. You know, I always think of it hybrid like car wise, engine and electric power. So, but that's just me. What is a feature of an Azure virtual network? So why would you use a virtual network for your company? Because you want it isolated and segmented. Simple as that. You want privacy. Okay, so something is the process of verifying a user's credentials. Okay, with this question, it's got to be between authorization and authentication. And this one can be confusing. So your credentials, what is that? It's like who you are. You say, you know, you're trying to prove who you say you are. That could be a photograph, could be a fingerprint. whatever. So it's got to be authentication. Oh, I missed one. Yeah, sorry. So an Azure region, if you read through the statements, it's definitely not the last one. You don't want high latency because it's slow. It's not only in Europe. It's not B. Yeah, so it's got to be A. That makes the most sense. Contains one or more data centers that are connected by using a low latency network. So premium storage accounts can be configured as Azure file shares. Of course they can. If it's premium, yes. You get what you pay for. You got basic, standard, and premium storage. So premium storage, you can pretty much do what you want. So that's got to be another yes for blob storage. But this one, so yeah, this is a tricky one. So storage, V2 storage is standard. And premium storage accounts don't use V2. So that's a no. So ExpressRoute uses border gateway protocol. Yeah, of course it does. So ExpressRoutes are private. Oh, and then yeah, moving on to this question, ExpressRoute uses the internet to connect to an on-premises network to Azure. That's no, because it's a private. ExpressRoute is private. So you can configure multiple ExpressRoutes circuits to connect to an on-premises data center to Azure. Oh, I would say yes for that one. Okay, so your company plans to migrate to Azure. So you have several departments in the company. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. What are two possible techniques to segment Azure for the departments? Okay, so you have different departments in a company. So which departments you could have? I don't know. HR, you could have finance, you could have engineering, you could have marketing. Um, so each department has its own resources, and each department will definitely have its subscriptions. And always read this because I've made that mistake before in the exam. I just click one answer. So two, you have to click two. So each department will have its own subscriptions and resource groups. So which node in the Azure portal should you use to assign a user to the reader role for a resource group? So you're assigning a role So that's got to be access. That's got to be access control. So true or false? Identity stored in an on-premises Active Directory can be synchronized to a Microsoft Entra tenant. On-premises Microsoft Entra tenant, I would say yes. Yep. So that's Microsoft Entra. I think that was used to be called Active Directory. I think they change names all the time. So identity stored in a Microsoft Entra tenant, third-party cloud services, and on-premises Active Directory can be used to access Azure resources. I would say yes, because you can use third-party cloud services with by assigning them Microsoft Entra Tenant ID. So yeah. Another true or false. Azure has built-in authentication and authorization services that provide secure access to Azure resources. Yes, it does have a built-in app for that. Okay, so when using something, you can group virtual machines into an update domain or fault domain. When using, I would say that's availability sets. And when I said before about reading the question, you see the way it says virtual machines here? I used to make the mistake of going to the answer that said, virtual machines here, virtual machines there. No. So like with this one, virtual machine scale sets are meant for deploying and managing a set of identical virtual machines. So it's not that one. So you have to be careful sometimes. You can use the Azure File Sync agent to sync on-prem data to an Azure. Yeah, so file sync in this occasion, it's got to be file share. True or false, you can create a resource group inside of another resource group. No, you cannot. No, remember that one. You can't. Resource groups are individual. An Azure virtual machine can be in multiple resource groups. Again, no, it can't. You need your virtual machine in a different resource group. Resource group can contain resources from multiple Azure regions. Yes, it can. Um, different regions don't matter. Yeah, so it can. Last one. What can you use to automatically send an alert if an administrator stops an Azure virtual machine? Okay, this one is this one always tricked me out because a lot of them, if you look at the answers, a lot of them seem plausible. However, I know it's monitor. Um, you can send whenever you're configuring your alerts in monitor, you can select there are so many options, but it comes at a cost. Um, it depends what you want to do. It depends on your needs. A lot of big companies will just click everything. I want to be notified all the time if anything's wrong. However, smaller companies, it's not cheap. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's monitor. So there we go. We done that in 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And test. Let's see what we get. 100%. There we go. Yeah, 25 minutes. And then at the end of the test, as I say, you can see your answers, go through all the, if you got things correct or incorrect. As I say, it gives you the explanation. So yeah, I just find it very useful. And as I said, if you want to read up more, it'll give you a link to Microsoft on each question as well. So it's a really useful way to learn. Okay, so guys, that's me. Next time I'll go through a few more tests on the AZ 900s, and hopefully you'll join me. Hopefully you find this useful. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, take care. Thank you. Bye, bye, bye.